Theodore.
There's another story coming right up, and you can always learn more about Theodore Tugboat on the internet. Find us through PBS Online.
Pushing and a pulling in the great big harbor, in the great big world is so much fun. So many brand new things to discover. Waking with the sun, gotta get the job done. Oh, Theodore and Emily, load up Hank and George and the harbor master too.
Oh, hello. I've decided that tonight I will have a sleepover in my office. Yep, I've got cookies and hot cocoa for a midnight snack. And I can read my maps. I can look at these maps and remember all the wonderful places that I've sailed to. Oh, and I can look at the stars through my binoculars. Beautiful. Oh boy. Oh, this is very special. I like to do this every night. Oh, and there are the tugboats. They're getting ready to go to sleep. Oh, there's Hank. You know, Hank had a little adventure one night. Have I ever told you that story? Early one morning, all the tugboats were asleep. All the tugboats, that is, but one. Hank was up. It was time for his special job for the week. Each morning, as soon as the sun woke up, Hank collected old bumpers from around the harbor and took them to Shediac, the shipyard shed. "Morning, Hank," called Shediac as soon as he saw the tug. Shediac looked forward to seeing Hank just as much as Hank looked forward to seeing him. "Good morning," smiled Hank. "Plenty of old bumpers today." "I've plenty of new ones for you," said Shediac. You see, Hank brought Shediac all the old worn-out bumpers from the tugs in the docks, and Shediac gave Hank the new ones in their place. It wasn't the biggest job in the big harbor, but to Hank, it was very important. "We better get started," said Hank, moving into position to unload his bumpers. Aye, Hank," said Shediac. Hank smiled. It was funny, but he always felt just a little bit bigger whenever he supplied the ship shed. Hank was coming home from work later that day. Theodore looked like he was leaving the harbor. "Where are you going, Theodore?" called Hank. "Oh, I'm going to see Owen," replied Theodore. He explained that his job that week was checking the anchor cable of Owen, the giant oil rig. Owen was working outside the harbor. "Boy, that must be fun," said Hank. Theodore knew that Hank had never been out on the ocean before. He had an idea. "Well, maybe you could come with me," he said. "Do you really think I could?" said Hank. "Well, we could ask the dispatcher," smiled Theodore. "Do you think we could ask him right now?" Well, the dispatcher listened carefully to Theodore's idea. Then he turned to Hank. "I think it would be fine, Hank," he began. "Theodore has a job to do, so try not to get in the way." "Oh, no, sir," said Hank. "Oh, I'll stay out of the way and it will be fine." Hank tried to look as serious as possible as he set off from the dock. "Oh, and Hank?" called the dispatcher. "Yes, sir," said Hank. "Have fun," said the dispatcher with a big smile on his voice. "Yes, sir," tooted Hank. The lights of the big harbor were just coming on as Hank set off with Theodore to visit Owen. It was his first time out on the ocean, and he was already having fun. Soon, the two tugs were floating into the wide, open ocean waters. "It's dark out here," Hank said softly. "Look up there, Hank," said Theodore. Hank looked up into the sky. "Ooh," he breathed. "It's the most beautiful sight I've ever seen." Far from the lights of the harbor, millions of stars shone down on the tugs with a magical glow. The tugboats turned off their engines and just drifted for a moment. "It's like we're the only boats in the whole world," said Hank. "It's so quiet," Theodore whispered. Just then, giant lights blazed on all around them. "Just what I love about it, too," a big voice roared. "So nice and peaceful." Sure enough, it was Owen. Hank and Theodore grinned. It wasn't peaceful anywhere Owen was.
Isn't this a Jim Dandy evening? Yes, sirree, Bob.
Owen blared on. You see, Owen is a very noisy oil rig.
Well, looky here.
Owen hollered.
If it isn't Hank.
Hi, Owen, Hank called up.
This calls for a special story,
shouted Owen. The big rig began to tell the tugs all about the time a giant sea cabbage got sucked right up in his drill and gave him cauliflower ears. Owen never told me this story before. Hank felt special being out on the ocean with Big Owen and Theodore. It was just like being an ocean tug.
Everyone hush,
Owen suddenly thundered.
Northumberland's coming.
Sure enough, Northumberland's submarine was cruising by, about to begin his nightly underwater ocean patrol.
Northumberland kinda likes it quiet,
Owen bellowed in a voice so loud it rattled Hank's anchor.
Northumberland,
Owen roared on.
We've a special guest tonight. Hank's here.
Hank looked around. Northumberland had disappeared. Then, just as suddenly, the sub popped up behind him, just as if Northumberland was playing a game. He dived again. Hank tried to guess where the sub would pop up next. Over here, Hank, smiled Theodore.
No, over here,
shouted Owen. Splash! Northumberland bobbed up like a great big bar of soap in the water. Hank laughed out loud. Hank? A voice called out from the dark. What are you doing out here? It was Constance, the Coast Guard ship. The dispatcher said I could come, said Hank, a little nervous.
He's fine,
bellowed Owen.
Little loud, though.
Everyone please turn off your lights, continued Constance. Hank, you come with me. Hank followed along behind Constance. His engine was beating so loudly, he was sure they could hear him all the way back to the big harbor. Oh, he hoped he hadn't done something wrong. Constance turned on her powerful Coast Guard searchlight. It was aimed up at the sky. Do you see those stars there that look like a big soup spoon? Uh-huh, replied Hank. They call those the Big Dipper, Constance continued. If you ever get lost out here, just follow the spoon home. Wow, said Hank, still staring at the sky.
Time to get to work,
boomed Owen. You better move back, Hank, called Theodore. Hank moved away, and Theodore began checking and moving Owen's enormous anchor cables. Well, Hank's smile felt like it was frozen on his face all the way home. Can we visit Owen again tomorrow night, Theodore? He said. Maybe. Theodore smiled sleepily. Hank couldn't wait. Bright and early the next morning, all the tugs were ready to begin the new day. All the tugs, that is, except one. Hank was so excited about visiting Owen again. He hadn't slept all night. Hank slept in. And by the time he finally woke up, it was too late to collect old bumpers for Shediac. I'll bring you those bumpers tomorrow, he called. Or maybe the day after. I'll be here, Hank, Shediac called back. He missed Hank's visit, and to tell you the truth, Hank missed visiting Shediac. But right now, all Hank could really think about was visiting Owen again. He couldn't wait for it to be dark. That evening, Hank got permission to visit Owen with Theodore again, and the two tugs set off out of the harbor. Do you think Northumberland will be there? Said Hank. Probably, smiled Theodore. And maybe Constance can show me that big flipper again, Hank went on, already looking forward to all the fun he was going to have with everybody. Owen, Hank called. I'm back again.
Good for you, Hank,
hollered Owen. What story are you going to tell? Said Hank. He settled in for a real rip-roarer.
Oh, no stories tonight,
replied Owen.
Heaps of work to do.
Theodore moved into position to begin moving one of Owen's giant anchor cables. Try and stay out of the way, Hank, he called. Hank backed up right away. Careful, Hank. It was Northumberland. Hank had almost backed into the sub. You surprised me, smiled Hank, thinking Northumberland was playing his diving game with him again. Sure enough, the submarine disappeared under the water. Where are you, Northumberland? Giggled Hank. Northumberland, said Hank after a moment. Northumberland. He must have gone, said Hank, puzzled. Constance, he cried. I was waiting for you. Hank was very happy to see the Coast Guard. Everyone turn off your lights, he shouted, so we can see the sky. Sorry, not now, Hank, said Constance as she cruised past. I'm very busy tonight.
Stay back there, little fella,
Owen called down to Hank.
These big cables can be dangerous.
Hank watched everyone, busy at work. Suddenly, he did feel like a little fella. A little fella who didn't really belong out there. Hank was quiet as he floated back home to the big harbor with Theodore. Theodore, he said at last. Yes, Hank, said Theodore. The first time we went to visit Owen, that was really special, wasn't it? Oh, sure was, smiled Theodore. But tonight, Hank went on, no one really had time to do special things with me. Theodore was thoughtful for a moment. I guess we all had other things we had to do. And I really didn't, said Hank sadly. I was just visiting, and everyone else had jobs to do. Hank caught sight of Shediac, the shipyard shed. Suddenly, Hank smiled. There was one job he had to do, an important job. Theodore, he said. Yes, Hank. Would you mind if tomorrow I didn't go with you to visit Owen? I have some other things I really need to do. I think that would be fine, Hank, smiled Theodore. Early the next morning, all the tugboats were asleep. All the tugboats, that is, but one. Hank was up. Good morning, Shediac, Hank called to the shipyard shed.
Morning, Hank,
Shediac called back.
I was hoping you'd come today.
I've been visiting Owen and staying up late, Hank explained.
Oh, that must be very special,
said Shediac. It is, said Hank, once in a while, but visiting you is special all the time. Now let's get your bumpers unloaded.
Aye, aye, Hank,
said Shediac. Hank smiled. It was funny, but he always felt just a little bit bigger whenever he supplied the shipyard shed.
You know, I've been thinking, if I slept in my office every night, it probably wouldn't seem so special. Well, just like if Hank visited Owen every night. But it's special now, and I'm going to enjoy it. Yeah, I've got my cookies and my cocoa, and I've got my maps and my binoculars. Yeah, I'm all set for some fun now. Thanks for visiting us here in the Big Harbor, and we'll see you all again next time. Oh, no, what should I do first? Oh, boy. Oh, I'm really going to enjoy this. I can hardly wait.
Theodore, he's a tugboat and a friendly tugboat too. A friendly tugboat too. Oh, Theodore and Emily, Bodak, Hank and George and the harbor master too.